Hey guys, today I'd like to demonstrate what 4-tick auto-attacking is, why it's good, why it exists, and why I think it's good for the game. So in essence, what 4-tick auto-attacking is doing an auto-attack plus an ability every single 4 ticks, much like the name would imply. I'll demonstrate here. So while normally the global cooldown is 3 ticks, when you're doing 4-tick auto-attacking, you ignore the global cooldown and instead go off your auto-attacks cooldown, which is going to be 4 ticks after your last ability. Now why does this work? This works because of 2 reasons. The first is spell on bar. The spell on bar allows you to auto-attack on the same tick that you do an ability. Ordinarily, in order to auto-attack, you'd have to auto-attack and then do an ability the tick after. Like, not like that. That was because of lag. But like that. So instead of 4-tick auto-attacking, it'd be 5-tick auto-attacking, because on the 4th tick, you'd be able to auto, and then you'd have to wait 1 tick in order to do your ability. It would look something like this. Sorry, I'm used to the 4-tick timing. But that was 5 ticks. Now the other reason why it works is because of the fact that when you switch weapons, your next auto attack is going to come in at when you're at the timing of your last weapon. This can be shown very easily with something like darts into 2H, and it has existed for as long as I've known RuneScape. I'll demonstrate it on OSRS. So I have mithril darts right here and an iron 2H sword. So I'll show that when I attack with mithril darts, they attack at a speed of, I want to say, I don't know, I don't remember what the speed is. But essentially you can, when the next mithril dart would have hit, the iron sword hits instead. And vice versa, after the iron sword, the mithril darts have a long pause in order to start attacking again because it's off the iron sword's time. So this has been a thing for a very long time. And basically, in order to do the 4-tick auto-attacking that we know today, we combine the two. So what we do is we do auto-attacks with our staff, and then we do the ability with our seismics, because the timing for the next auto-attack is dictated by the last ability's weapon. So what do you do in order to do the 4-tick auto-attacking that is shown by many streamers? Essentially what it is you hit your spell on bar, then you with your staff on, and then you switch to your seismics or appraisal or whatever, and do the ability with that, and switch back to your staff afterwards so that you can do your next auto attack with staff. It's a bit complicated, and it's shown much more easily with keybinds, so I'll show you with mine. My air surge is V, and the ability I'll use is D breath. So what I do is I hit V with my staff on, then I switch to my appraisal, and then I hit S, and then a tick later I'll switch back to my staff of Sliske. However, this is quite good because of the fact that auto attacks per tick, when you're doing it this way, when you're only using 1 ability for a staff auto attacks, they tend to be quite good damage per tick compared to regular abilities. I'll demonstrate it using a bit of an extreme example, comparing the average ability damage per tick of a 100% ability such as Sacrifice plus an auto attack compared to an ability like Sonic Wave or Concentrated Blast, which you would normally use instead, as when you're doing 4-tick auto attack every ability, you don't really use those. So basically, Sonic Wave is a 170% damage ability, not factoring in its accuracy boost on your next ability. Its minimum roll is 20%, and its maximum roll, or 20% of 157%, and its maximum roll is obviously 100% of 57%. So its average roll is going to be 60% of that. So we'll do that. And then this is done in 3 ticks because of the global cooldown, so that will be our first number. And we'll contrast that with 100% plus an auto attack. And auto attack's max hit is going to be 150% of your ability damage, and impact will be 60%, will be 100%. The average for an auto attack, though, is there's no minimum hit on auto attacks, so the average will actually be half of 150% and will be 75%, while the average for impact will be 60%. So if you add those, you get 75 plus 50, and you get that's 120, and then you divide that by 4 in order to get your average ability damage per tick. I'll quickly use a calculator for the other one because those are decimals and I can't do that in my head. $31.4 is the average ability damage per tick of just using Sonic Wave, while 125 over 4 is... Sorry. Second. Oh, whoops, my bad. No, it's 135, not 125. Now, that's not a very large increase, as I'm sure you can tell, but this isn't really a real-world example. When you're actually PVMing, not every single time you use 4-tick auto-attacking, it's going to be replacing a 157% ability with a 100% ability. Oftentimes, you'll be using the same ability like Corruption or D-Breath, and it will just have an auto-attack as well. So, while if every single build was like this, it'd be a very minor DPS increase, in the real world, it ends up being more significant than that. Now, this is just one application of Spell on Bar. There are others, like, for notably, Detonate is very, very powerful with this, because Detonate Spell on Bar allows you to detonate plus do an auto attack along with your ability on the same tick, as I'll demonstrate here. So I detonate, then I use my Spell on Bar, clicking that, hitting my detonate, and then using wall magic. Okay, I messed up there, but you get the point. I think this is weird. There's no latency on the world, but I'm messing up a lot. But regardless, I think you understand what I mean. Now, I'm gonna just give the limitations of the Spell on Bar. So while Spell on Bar is incredibly good and very, very useful, because even if you do a staff ability and then you do a defensive, you can then auto attack along with your next ability and losslessly instead of having to wait a tick. But that doesn't mean that it's that good. So when you use a channeled ability such as Asphyxiate or Concentrated Blast, you won't be able to auto attack afterwards for quite a few ticks. This is why after you do one of those, you're not going to really be able to instantly go into a staff auto and keep 4-ticking. You're going to have to first do a seismic ability. That's really the only huge limitation of Spell on Bar, and it's not really like a downside to using it, it's just why you don't really see people 4-ticking after combo abilities. Now, why do I think it's good for the game? Well, the first reason I think it's good is because it adds an element of micromanagement. In RuneScape, you don't really have much micromanagement outside of switches and stuff like 4-ticking, because the game is so slow on the 0.6 seconds tick and the 1.8 second global cooldown that you don't really have much that you can do. This adds something that you can micromanage and really focus on in order to have a substantial DPS increase. And this ties directly into my next reason, which is the maximum APM increase. So normally what you're going to be doing when you PVM on RuneScape is going to be doing an ability every single 3 ticks. Like, you'll attack, and then you'll maybe just sit still, and then you'll hit D-Breath, and then you'll hit Corruption, and stuff like that, right? Every single 3 ticks you'll be doing one action, especially at stuff like AOD where you don't really have to move around. However, when you're doing 4-tick every single ability, this massively increases it. Because, for example, right, you do an ability, and then you switch to staff, and then you do auto-attacking, switch to seismics, do your ability, and then switch back to staff. This ends up being 5 actions every single 4 ticks instead of 1 action every 3 ticks. Now, so I will quickly just do the math on what percent of increase that is. Now, sorry, my bad. 5 over 4 minus 33 divided by 0.333. Okay, so that's like a 270% APM increase. That's pretty massive, and it basically, the combination of these two means that using spell on bar in order to do fortick every single ability is way more effort, and I don't think anyone would deny that. And I think that is a valid reason for why something should be better, that it requires way more actions and is a lot harder to do, which ties into execution error. With normally just hitting abilities, there isn't really much room for using it for execution error. You hit your ability on the correct tick and then you move on. It's kind of hard to mess up. But with 4-tick auto-attacking, there's so much that can go wrong. Even if something looks right, it still can be totally off sometimes. For example, I'll show this. Okay, sorry, what was I doing? There, I didn't get my auto attack. And alright, sorry, I was interrupted. Okay, so even things that look on the surface to be the same often end up different. I turned on max hit dummy mode in order to clearly show the difference. So first, what I'm going to do is something that looks fairly correct. Well, not there because I'm getting some lag for some reason, but even small timing errors can lead you to end up getting seismic auto attacks every single time instead of staff auto attacks, which handily makes it probably not worth it. They don't really look that different on the surface, but one is very good and the other is very, very mediocre. As you can see, 3k instead of like 1.3k. Now, the next reason, like, execution error is large, and I'll show it one more time by quickly draining my adrenaline and tagging the boss again, taking the dummy again in order to show another large thing. So, ideally you would, when you're tagging in a monster, you do a staff auto and then you do a seismic ability like this. But it's very easy to mess up the timing and not do hit your spell on bar quick enough, and all you end up doing is doing the seismic ability, but you don't get a dren for anything. As shown like that. So instead of getting an auto attack and then your staff ability, all you end up doing is just getting your ability. No auto attack, no adrenaline for your ability. And while this does imbalance mage, and people will call for it to get nerfed because of that, I think instead of getting rid of this bug of spell on bar, I think it'd be better to add auto attack on bar for all styles. Giving it would keep the balance of range, mage, and melee, bring that back, make stuff besides mage viable, while still keeping this high effort, high probability of error method, and really separate people who are willing to put in that effort and to micromanage their DPS from those who aren't. So yeah, I hope my reasons were compelling, and I hope this was a good guide on how to do it.